Hello and welcome to Scream Scene, the horror movie podcast where we watch every horror movie ever made in chronological order, and then we rank them from best to worst. My name's Sarah.
And I'm Ben.
Thank you so much for listening to us today. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm doing pretty great, Sarah.
Oh, that's good to hear. Is it because we just got back from a nice vacation?
Yes, that is partially the case. We had a really lovely vacation. We visited some friends. We went to a lot of really cool places, and now we're back home again. Also, we just saw Sinners.
Yeah, that would put anyone in a good mood, I think.
Yeah, very, very good movie.
Very good movie. If you really like the way that music can be used in film, definitely go see this movie. If you really like to see how people handle vampires in the modern age correctly, go see this movie. If you want to see Michael B. Jordan be real hot times two, go see this movie.
There's a lot of hot people in this movie.
A lot of hot movie. And not just because vampires burn up in the sun.
You know, I think for me, the pull quote would be, it does for vampire movies what Black Panther did for superhero movies. Which I think makes sense. It's the same director.
Yeah, I feel like it feels reductive.
I guess, but it very much has that same sense of like fusing a particular genre with like contemporary Black culture and like bringing in that point of view and that culture into that genre in like a very holistic fashion.
Okay. I can see where you're coming from now. I still stand by, I mean, a pull quote is in its nature reductive,
yes.
So I'll stop nitpicking.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think has us in a good mood is when we were on our trip to Seattle and Portland, we went to the Museum of Pop Culture. We saw their horror section of their installation. Mm-hmm. Very, very cool. And we're going to have kind of a feature about that up on our Patreon in the next little bit, if it's not up already by the time this episode comes out. And in Portland, we went to the Freaky But True Peculiarium, which is very much a Ripley's Believe It or Not knockoff, basically. It's very funny, very tongue-in-cheek, but very, very fun. So we'll also have a bit about that. And there's some things that we saw during our non-horror related travels, just at like the Portland Art Museum or the Seattle Art Museum, or things that I thought would be relevant or of interest to Scream Scene folks. So that will be up on the Patreon for like any viewer, but the travel log, I guess, if you want to call it that, about Mopop and the Peculiarium will be available to, I think writing is at $10 or
That's
higher.
right, yeah.
But yeah, we'll still have some stuff for patrons at all levels because we really, really appreciate you guys.
And I wouldn't be surprised if like a review of Sinners goes up on the Patreon for $10 as well at some point.
Yeah, you feel good to write a review. My problem with writing some reviews, for my part, is sometimes it's just like, it was good.
Yeah.
Like, what more do you want me to say? It was good.
It is legitimately harder to write reviews of good movies than bad ones.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things we do here on Scream Scene is like we provide all that like historical cultural context to movies. And I was thinking about this and I was like, you know, in 2065, when we cover Sinners for the podcast, that episode's going to be like 4 hours long because there's so much historical cultural context being drawn upon in that movie. It's so dense.
Like they even bring in hoodoo, which is just like a different term for voodoo. But it's, you know, it's like Louisiana, I think, Mississippi, South.
Louisiana, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, New Orleans is in that state. So you have that tradition that they're drawing upon. So like there's a lot of things that they're pulling in. We get some Irish shit. Like it's great.
Yeah. It's a lot. But we're not talking about Sinners today, unfortunately.
No. What are we talking about today?
Today, Sarah, we are talking about The Devil's Hand from 1961, directed by William J. Hole Jr.
Okay, that's quite the name. Quite the mouthful.
Yes, well, what is the mouth if not a hole?
Full. All right, tell me about it.
So, I mean, this is a B movie, pure and simple. It was produced by Alvin K. Bubbis and Rex Carlton, a set of producers who produced B movies, and it was released by Crown International Pictures, a company that distributed B movies. Crown was founded in 1959 by former RKO exec Newton Jacobs and was very much designed after the AIP model, as you can kind of tell from the name. They distributed low-budget genre films. They even distributed AIP product in like markets that AIP hadn't penetrated yet. They also distributed some foreign films like Toho's Varan the Unbelievable.
That's hard to believe.
They were a pretty small operation. They started out releasing 6 films a year. And by like 1971, they had expanded to 12 films a year. They did not start producing their own product until 1963. Crown International Pictures was very consciously a small operation. The name of the game was to never extend themselves.
Okay.
So Crown released Beast of Yucca Flats in some territories.
Oh, okay.
And they released this film on a double feature with Bloodlust, which is a uncredited adaptation of The Most Dangerous Game, which is up for us next episode.
But The Most Dangerous Game is not a horror movie, Ben.
Correct. I think we did cover it for Horror Adjacent on the Patreon.
I don't recall. I know we watched it
we've definitely
outside of the
watched
podcast,
it. Yeah,
though.
we've definitely watched it. Yeah, like Bloodlust it does not credit itself as being a Most Dangerous Game adaptation, but it sort of treats it as if it was a stock plot, which like it has become over the years. And I think its main difference with the original story is that the people being hunted are like a cast of teenagers.
Okay, yeah, I think that's important for us to cover then.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's next week.
Next week, yes. So back to The Devil's Hand. So as I mentioned, the director of this movie was William J. Hole Jr., who got his start in the picture business at age 20 in 1938 as an extra, and then he worked as a script supervisor throughout the 40s and 50s. His first feature film as a director was the crime movie Hellbound in 1957, and he followed that up with Speed Crazy and Ghost of Drag Strip Hollow in 1959.
Oh, that was up for a potential horror adjacent episode.
Yes. Ghost of Drag Strip Hollow is an AIP film. It's like a teen drag race meets ghost movie, very like proto Scooby-Doo in some ways. And it was also notable for being the final film that Paul Blaisdell worked on for AIP. The screenplay for The Devil's Hand is by Joyce Hames, who was a former model, dancer, and fashion illustrator who was born in Philadelphia in 1930 and moved out to California in 1950 to work in motion pictures. She primarily worked as a secretary and kind of wrote scripts on the side, such as this one. Years after this movie, Hames would befriend Clint Eastwood, and she wrote the screenplay for Play Misty for Me, which was his directorial debut in 1971. And after that, her career really picked up in the 70s. She remained a favored writer for Eastwood, but all of that was kind of cut short in 1978 when she passed away following a battle with breast cancer. You know, at least the writer of this movie went on to bigger and better things.
That's implying that no one else does, Ben.
That's not quite true.
Okay.
So The Devil's Hand was shot very quickly in January of 1959.
Oh, but it took 2 years in post? Or just 2 years to get it out? Yeah,
so the production had a lot of financial problems, we'll put it this way. For instance, a lot of the cast was owed money by this movie. Some of them weren't paid. eventually. And the cast was also really unhappy with changes that were made to the script during filming. So they had, honestly, like a pretty good cast signed on for this. And then everybody was like not happy about the material. I guess they changed during filming the picture's emphasis. I guess originally it was
Instead of the devil's hand, it was the devil's hand.
Maybe. It was originally much more about witchcraft, and then it became more and more about devil worship.
I mean, those are fairly parallel.
Without like seeing the original script, I don't know exactly what was changed. Like those feel like very related ideas to me.
Yeah, they go hand in hand.
Right. But one of the people who was unhappy about these changes was the film's star, actress Linda Christian, who was born Bianca Rosa Henrietta Stella Welter Vornhauer in Mexico to a Dutch father and a European Mexican mother in 1923.
The Dutch and Spanish names both have a long tradition of long names.
Yeah.
So this is like, no wonder her name was like, I think I counted 5 or 6 names. Like, this makes a lot of sense.
Her family moved around frequently when she was a child, and she became able to speak Spanish, French, German, Dutch, English, and Italian fluently.
Dang.
As well as some Arabic and Russian on the side.
Dang. Did she end up becoming a spy? Because that's what happened with Christopher Lee.
Right. She originally wanted to be a doctor, but after she graduated high school, she ended up meeting her Hollywood crush, Errol Flynn, and becoming his girlfriend.
Oh, no.
And he convinced her to get screen tested at MGM and become an actress. And Flynn is the one who gave her the screen name Linda Christian, partially based on the fact that he had played Fletcher Christian in a movie version of Mutiny on the Bounty. And he also paid for her cosmetic dental surgery to straighten her teeth. Her film debut was in 1944 at age 21, and in 1949 she married Tyrone Power, Flynn's swashbuckling rival.
Good for her.
In 1954, she played Valerie Mathis in the American television adaptation of Casino Royale, which starred Barry Nelson as the Americanized Jimmy Bond.
Oh, Jimmy Bond. That's not a good movie.
And so Linda Christian is the first Bond girl in terms of like, you know, your obscure bar trivia night questions, long before the Bond movie series really, you know, got started. She ended up divorcing Tyrone Power in 1956, and she went on to marry actor Edmund Purdom in 1962, largely retiring from acting in the late 1960s, and she passed away in 2011 at age 87.
Okay.
You could say that she didn't go on to do great things, but she had a major career sort of up to now. Like she was a known, you know, actress, known property, as it were. Her younger sister, Ariadna Welter, also appears in this movie. She was born in Mexico in 1930. Her full name is Ariadna Gloria Rosa Welter Vornhauer. And she was the wife of Mexican film producer Gustavo Alatriste. And, well, she was the female lead in El Vampiro in 1957. She played Marta, the young girl who comes to the hacienda. And she actually continued to appear in Mexican horror films throughout the 1960s. She was not paid for her appearance in The Devil's Hand, and that caused her to swear off doing American pictures.
Good for her.
The picture's male lead was similarly unimpressed with the material, and this is Robert Alda, father of Alan Alda of MASH fame.
You heard it here first, folks. He's a Nepo baby.
Yes, absolutely. And continuing on the tradition here, Robert Alda was born Alfonso Giuseppe Giovanni Roberto d'Abruzzo in New York City in 1914. And he got his start in vaudeville before transitioning to radio and then film, taking the lead role in the George Gershwin biopic Rhapsody in Blue in 1946. And in fact, we have already seen Robert Alda in The Beast with Five Fingers in 1949.
Oh, was he like a bit part? I don't remember.
Yeah, he was a smaller role,
okay.
for sure.
So I was like, I feel like we would have mentioned him before.
But the other big name in this movie, big name for me, I don't know about other people, but this picture's villain is played by actor Neil Hamilton, best remembered today for playing Commissioner Gordon on the Batman television show of the late 1960s.
Oh, the Adam West?
Yeah, the Adam West show.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's great.
Neil Hamilton was born in Massachusetts in 1899 and got his start as a shirt model in fashion advertisements, and his first film role way back in 1918. He was a leading man at Paramount in the 1920s. He played Nick Carraway in the 1926 silent version of The Great Gatsby. He was the squadron commander in the original 1930 version of the Dawn Patrol. He also played Jane's fiance in the 1932 version of Tarzan the Ape Man.
Oh, that's funny.
By the 1940s, lead roles had kind of dried up for Hamilton, and so he turned to television, which led to the iconic role on Batman, which is like an excellent comedic role. Like, he is very funny as Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, it's kind of like a straight man approach, though,
yes.
like Leslie Nielsen does.
Yes, absolutely.
That's later in the 60s, right?
Yes, that starts in 1966.
Yeah.
And Neil Hamilton passed away in 1984 at age 85.
Okay.
Also appearing in the film is Queen of the Bee movies, Jean Carmen, who was 29 years old when the picture was shot. She was a pinup model and trick shot golfer who would scam people on golf courses in Vegas, kind of putting on this like dumb blonde approach and then doing all these trick shots and like winning people's money.
I remember us talking about her in the past.
Yes.
Because this was like such a cool thing.
Yes, she was in The Monster of Piedras Blancas, and she was brought to Hollywood by Frank Sinatra, she kind of won the attention of doing these Vegas scams. In Hollywood, she frequently played femme fatales. And following mafia threats on her life in 1962, she left Hollywood for Scottsdale, Arizona, where she retired, got married with 3 kids, and led a quiet life until her death in 2007.
Yes, I remember all this.
Other notables in the cast include former silent era star Gertrude Astor and Roger Corman stalwart Bruno Vizzotta.
Okay.
So, as previously mentioned, financial issues delayed the release of The Devil's Hand until September 13th, 1961 in the United States. The picture was widely panned by critics. It was considered cheap, shallow, and boring. The beauty of Linda Christian was seen by many reviewers as the sole positive aspect. The LA Times noted that she often wears flimsy negligee in the film, but none were quite so transparent as the plot.
Ooh, that's a good line.
Yeah. The copyright on The Devil's Hand lapsed a long time ago, and so it has been released in a bevy of home video formats over the years. You can find it online on YouTube and Tubi.
Great. Well, folks, watch along. Sounds like it'll be a fun time. You can find it on our YouTube playlist at screamscenepodcast.com. You're going to hear a brief musical interlude, and when we come back, we will discuss The Devil's Hand from 1961, directed by William J. Hole Jr.
See you on the other side, everybody. Welcome back to Scream Scene, everybody. We just finished watching The Devil's Hand from 1961. Sarah, what'd you think?
This movie had like a weird amount of misogyny.
Like a weird amount of unnecessary, like, okay, wait. Misogyny is never necessary.
Thank you.
But like like
just casual.
Well, no, it's not casual, because like there's a level of casual misogyny you might expect from an American film from 1961. Like anyone who's watched, like a James Bond movie would kind of get what I mean. This movie actually goes out of its way to be misogynistic. I think where you get casual from is it's not like an anti-woman movie, but it is a movie that like will go out of its way to have lines of dialogue like, "You're a very, perceptive woman. Of course, you're still a woman."
Yes.
Stuff like that, where it's
and like when one person gets jealous, she's like, "Well, I am only a woman, so what can you expect?"
Yeah, which is weird because the movie was written by a woman, but like internalized misogyny is a thing.
Yeah. But the reason as well that it's so weird is because it has like, there's no point to it.
Yeah, the misogyny isn't like baked into the plot or the characters.
Yeah.
It's literally just like if you were reading a book and every time the word woman came up, there was like a little footnote. And then you like followed the footnote down at the bottom of the page and it said, which, as we know, is an inferior kind of creature. Like, it's like that, but in movie dialogue. It's just like every time women come up as a concept, the movie has to stop and be like, which, women.
Yeah. The movie also was very weird in how it depicts the cult. Because it's African. No, wait, it's Thai. No, wait, here's some Chinese lettering.
Yeah, it's just like exotic. It's just like
exotic, foreign, voodoo-esque, maybe.
Non-European.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you can tell that we really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this movie's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I'll go into some more detail on how it's pretty bad, but we should probably get the plot synopsis out of the way, yes?
Yes. The four main characters that we really need to worry about here are Rick Turner, Donna, some last name.
Trent,
Donna Trent, Bianca Milan, and Francis something or other.
Francis Lamont.
Everyone else is kind of secondary, but yeah. So Rick Turner, he's going steady with Donna, but lately he's been dreaming of some unknown woman and therefore having a really hard time getting any kind of sleep. One sleepless night, he wanders to a strange doll shop where there's a doll that happens to look like his dream woman. The next day, he takes Donna because he's like, this is all very weird. Maybe I should have a witness with me to confirm that I'm not crazy.
Yeah, like, which to be fair to Rick, like, he's trying to be like open and honest, like with his girlfriend. It's like, listen, I know it sounds bad that I'm dreaming of this other woman, but I need you to understand that this is like weird, like supernatural shit, not like I'm just, yeah.
Not that I'm an asshole.
Right.
He is an asshole, but it's fine.
Not yet.
He is.
Okay.
Now the owner, named Francis, he claims that he made the doll to Rick's own specifications of this photo of this unknown woman whose name turns out to be Bianca Milan. All of this is very strange, but also there's a doll of Donna, and Donna's very upset about there being a doll of this unknown woman, sees the doll of herself and goes, oh, was this all a ruse to give me this doll? And he's like, no, I've never been in this doll shop. And Francis insists that doll is not of Donna at all. They leave the doll shop and we see Francis take this giant needle to Donna's doll right into the heart. And then she collapses and goes to the hospital because now she has a heart problem. While she's recovering, Rick has another dream of Bianca, and this time she speaks to him, telling him to bring that doll to her. He does so.
Bianca's doll.
Yeah.
The doll for Bianca.
Bianca's doll.
Right.
He does so and meets her at her apartment, and she explains that all of this has been through thought projection because she is a witch due to powers from the cult of Gamba. Now, Gamba is not real. It's like a made-up, it's not based off of any kind of real cult or African deity or anything like that. It's all just made up.
It is not real in the context of our world here.
Real world.
Right.
Not the Matrix world.
Right.
So she seduces him, but says that they can't be together unless he joins the cult tonight.
So she claims that like everything that's happened so far is because she wants him. Like that's why she's been like, like
why him in particular, and
it's why she's been like Snapchatting him in his dreams, and like he's like, but why me? Like I'm about to get married, and she's like, right. So like I wanted you because I couldn't have you ordinarily. Like I needed to use, telepathy and whatever to get you. And it's at first it seems like a little unclear if this is just like a super elaborate recruitment ritual for this cult. But I guess no, she really wants Rick.
And he really wants her, so he agrees to join the cult. They head to the doll shop because in the basement is where the cult is centered. And Francis leads the cult. He's known as like the head executioner.
Which should have been a warning sign if that's like the name of your priest.
Now Gamba is repeatedly referred to as like the devil god.
The devil god of evil.
Of evil, of death. And we get to see a loyalty test. Basically, there's a chandelier that has knives on it. Francis spins it with a giant pole, and basically Gamba will decide which knife will be over the person whose loyalty is being tested. And then the chandelier descends, and it might be a real knife, in which case that person dies, or it might be a rubber knife, in which case that person has been determined to be loyal. We see this loyalty test, and then we see this joining ceremony, basically. So now Rick is a member, and the benefits that he gets to experience include sleeping with Bianca, but also winning at horse racing, betting, gambling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, normal words to say, and doing well at the stock market. All is coming up Rick until he notices that he's also like abandoned Donna,
yes,
by the way. And in fact, like she has sent him like letters to be like, you haven't come to see me in an unknown amount of time. What the fuck? And he like just continues ignoring her. And then he notices one day in the doll shop that there's the Donna doll with a needle through the heart, because it's just out in the open. So he calls on Donna and explains that, like, we can't be together. That's in the past. But midnight tonight, you'll be healed. So he sneaks into the doll shop and removes the pin from Donna's doll, makes it look like it's still pinned when it's not actually. He almost gets caught by Francis, but Rick manages to, like, sneak out the back door. Francis believes that it's a different member who has snuck in because there's like a note that's left that this guy was actually a reporter trying to like divulge the secrets of the cult. Another loyalty test that we see that Rick goes through is one of the other members of the cult comes to him and she's like, no, I need to like get out of this cult. Like this isn't right for me to be here. And basically he has to decide whether to turn her in and have her potentially die or to keep it secret. He goes to turn her in and it turns out it was all a ruse to see would he actually go that far. Now there's like an emergency ceremony held because Francis is like, someone among you is a faker and has been disloyal. And we see that he basically takes a doll of the person who we know to be the reporter and sticks the needle through the skull as the reporter is driving, and he reacts and goes off the road and his car explodes because his doll gets put into the fire. Rick was worried that he was going to be seen as disloyal because he removed the pin from the doll, but he's like, oh, no, I'm safe. Except Donna is healed, and that tips off Bianca about the doll. So she arranges for her own kind of loyalty test. That night, there's a ceremony, and Donna is brought out as the sacrifice. And Rick is the one who has to like spin the wheel or spin the chandelier to see like which knife will be over Donna. And this is too far for Rick. He stops the ceremony. He fights Francis. starts a fire, drops the chandelier that happens to fall into Francis, so he's dead, and he escapes with Donna. The entire cult headquarters is going up in flames. We see Bianca grab her own doll and escape, and presumably everyone else dies? We don't see anyone else escape, just like running around in the fire. So Rick gets Donna into the car, they're driving away, and he's like, don't worry, Donna, we're going to be safe, and I'm going to be free of this cult now. Like, everything's fine. And then we see Bianca doing her mental telepathy in the clouds, saying a line that's like, that's what he thinks. Then that's the end.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like a real Oscar bait of a movie. But yeah, like it's not good. But what was interesting is through a lot of it, it does feel like it's structured like a rom-com. Mm-hmm. That's still also a supernatural horror movie.
So, okay, let's since you bring that up, let's address the elephant in the room here. I don't think this is horror.
Okay.
I'm not sure what it is. Maybe like supernatural drama. It's just a story. It's just a bunch of stuff that happens. But I don't think this is horror. I don't think it should rank. Nothing horrific really happens in this movie. Now, I know that like we often say that like a bad horror movie is still a horror movie, right? And I can see why people in the cast might have thought the script seemed good. There's like some promising ideas here and there that could have been interesting if the filmmakers really had anything to say about like cults or the nature of evil, which like they don't. And I can see a version of this movie in my head if it was like Val Lewton producing it that like maybe could have been interesting because he made that movie. It was called The Seventh Victim. It's good. But like there's nothing horror in this movie. And I can like go into real depth. I have a whole rant about this fucking cult, but like nothing happens like that's really all that horror. There's just like supernatural elements that often pop up in horror, like voodoo dolls or devil worship. But you're right. Like structurally, this is like a romantic drama, basically, with supernatural elements.
Yeah, I said rom-com without remembering that the com part is comedy.
Right.
There's no comedy in here.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could find things to laugh at, but yeah, romantic drama. I see what you're saying. There's the parts in the script that were promising that were in here. It wasn't like it got cut or anything like that. Were things that, like, it's set up to be sufficiently creepy. What's going on with Rick? And he, during the ceremony, he, like, dedicates, like, yeah, I'll do evil in that very, like, generic way. We don't get to actually see him do evil. And in fact, when that woman is doing the ruse of, like, no, I need to leave, she has a line about, like, you know, they force you to do things that
like unspeakable acts
to the point where like being a decent person seems unthinkable. And then you start to do these like horrific acts without being told.
Mm-hmm. Like your soul is corrupted and
yeah. And like, you don't get to see any of that.
No.
But what I will say is like, there is, you know, a level of like a fear there, right? Like of losing yourself in something that you believe in. Maybe he only started believing in it because he wanted, you know, that sex. But like still like how easy it is for people to fall.
I think this is a movie that is like undercut at every step by how like really tepid it is, by how like afraid it is to dip a toe in to anything. You know, the scenes that should be creepy don't really feel like it because, as I kind of mentioned earlier, this feels like something shot for TV. There's occasionally some nice creepy lighting here and there in the movie. When we're in Rick's apartment and he's having his dreams, The lighting's kind of creepy. When Commissioner Gordon, when Francis Lamont is doing his like sermons at the altar of the cult, they give him some like Bela Lugosi eye lighting that's pretty good. But for the most part, like the mise en scene here is really quite basic. It's often just flatly lit scenes shot entirely like in proscenium medium shots. We're in a like flat like Academy ratio, like square 4:3 ratio, and so everything just feels very like shot for TV, shot for sitcom kind of lighting. Nothing really feels like a horror movie. There's no scenes in this movie that feel like they're trying to scare the audience.
I disagree. I think like it tries to build tension, like when you see the first loyalty test person, and then also Donna's face as the chandelier is being lowered. I don't think it's effective, and I think it's also a bit old hat. I struggle because like we've talked about this before on the podcast, but like, putting someone in danger and having some tension around whether they'll get out of it or not does not necessarily make something a horror movie. I mean, that happens in like action movies or really like most kinds of, like a lot of kinds of movies, right? Sure. I guess I'm also just trying to put myself in the shoes of it's early 1960s, Christian America.
Right.
And the idea of like the devil is everywhere. And Rick, as he's being drawn to the doll shop, talks about how he's being drawn by an unknowable force. And that made me think about like with the devil's hand and like that's a tangent. I won't go down there.
The devil's hand of the market?
Yeah, I was thinking about Laissez-faire, but also like the devil's like always that you're always at risk of being tempted, and that is literally true here. And I'm just like,
okay, so here's the problem. The only context in which this movie is scary or a horror movie is, like you said, in like a Christian American context, right? But it's not a Christian movie. God is never brought up. Christ is never brought up. Heaven, your immortal soul, all the things.
They talk about immortal souls.
Sure. But like all the concepts that would contextualize making any of this kind of horror as an idea don't get brought up. You compare this to like later movies down the line, that you either have movies that actually examine what cults are, like you have like something like Midsommar, or you have movies that actually interrogate like Christian versus pagan values, like The Wicker Man. And the problem here is this movie's like written with a very Christian context, but the Christian context is never stated and never like spoken up for. So the movie doesn't have a point of view on any of the things it's talking about.
I think that's because it's assumed.
I understand.
Because it's like, the cultural hegemony of blah, 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 and Gramsci.
I understand that idea that it's assumed and it's cultural hegemony, but like there's also a difference between specifically like Christian movies or Christian music or Christian culture and like mainstream American culture. And when I say this only makes sense in the context of like Christian stuff, I mean, like, if this was a out and out Christian movie, the movie's tepidness and weirdness about how it depicts the cult would work a lot better. And I think, okay, let me just do my rant about this cult because so many of my problems with this movie are bound up in this.
Can I throw in something real quick?
Yeah, for sure.
So they keep talking about these horrible, unspeakable acts.
Right.
The only acts we see Rick doing is boning down before being married.
And gambling.
Well, yeah.
So this is part of my thing.
Okay,
so this
cool.
is all part and parcel. So the poor writing of the cult in this movie, a lot of it comes down to the fact that everything's extremely vague and we don't really get specifics. And what specifics we do get feel very tepid, especially for a so-called horror movie in 1961. Like, we're making progress in terms of actually having some pretty nasty stuff on the screen, right? But it also speaks to a genuine problem that I think a lot of movies fall into when they try to depict a quote unquote evil religion. And they lack kind of any sort of awareness in this film about what a cult like this actually might be like. And that really robs the movie of any potential interest it might have. So like, first up, we have the really weird thing that they keep referring to Gamba as a devil god, consistently, which is a categorization that uses Christian terminology in a completely nonsensical way. From the perspective of Christianity, a devil god doesn't make any sense. Surely, like, authentic worshipers of Gamba would just call him a god, and then regarding him as a devil would be the outside Christian perspective, right? Like, in medieval times, Christianity explained the religions of other peoples as, oh, that's not really a god, that's a devil in disguise, right? Judaism kind of did the same thing as well. But then secondly, for a god of evil, this cult has like a very tame view of what evil is. And this comes to what you were saying, right? Like, what's the appeal of this cult? What's their goal? Like, are the members paying Francis to be here? Because we never get any sense of that. So, like, what's Francis's motivation in running it? What are they getting out of it? So the sales pitch for Rick was that he had to join in order to fuck Bianca, right? What was the sales pitch for everyone else?
Yeah, we do see in the case of the like reporter, his sponsor also gets like killed. But it's like, was there a gay thing going on?
Well,
like,
so
there's nothing in that.
The reporter's sponsor was Bruno Vasoda. So, like, it's really hard to believe that just, like, seduction is the standard recruitment technique in that case. You would think that the appeal of a god of evil and a cult of evil would be permission to do as thou wilt, as Aleister Crowley said with Thelema, right? This idea that, like, oh, if you join our cult, you don't have to be bound by Christian morals anymore. But as you pointed out, the only evil we see is that Rick gambles and wins, and he plays the stock market and wins, and he leaves his girlfriend for another woman. That's another thing that's like key to me here is like, okay, yes, he's sleeping with Bianca before getting married, which is a very like Christian moral thing. But like, that's the like unspeakable horrors that will corrupt your entire soul that this cult it's like, oh, we do sex and we make money. Like, dude, that's just America, man. Like, like
more in the 80s.
The thing is like, he's not even married to Donna. So all he really did was break up with his girlfriend for another woman. Like, this is asshole behavior for sure, but it is hardly like soul destroying levels of evil. And like, meanwhile, the cult itself, like in terms of its beliefs, like, yes, they practice sacrifice, but only like a really weak sauce Russian roulette, like rigged version of sacrifice. That's really just like a way for them to get rid of people the cult wants to get rid of anyways. Which isn't really sacrifice. Like, the cult does kill people, but it's people who like betrayed them, right? So like, ultimately, what are the actual beliefs of this cult? What are they actually preaching? What is anyone getting out of this? What's the point of any of it? Like, oh, if you worship Gamba, you can make easy money. That's a pretty good deal. Like, it's only really bad from that Christian perspective, because if you don't worship Christ, if you don't accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, your soul is damned. That's the Christian belief, right? But then all that means is that Gamba worship is really no different from any other non-Christian religion in the real world. Like, by the standards of this movie, Gamba is only like slightly more evil than like Hinduism, simply by dint of the fact that like Gamba approves of like murder when necessary.
Yeah, let me just take this moment to throw out that there's a, I believe it's Thai, but there's a statue of Buddha
Oh yeah, there's a statue of Buddha, but all like the music is done by this like shirtless black guy on like drums, so that gives it like this African flavor. And then like there's this black couple that like dances, but then like there's a Chinese character on the altar, like, and then we have voodoo dolls. Like it's all just, as you said at the top, right? That this is just like an amalgamation of all non-European religions.
Yeah, non-Christian religions. Okay.
But
I'll let you continue.
It doesn't have a Roman or a Greek or a Norse flavor, right? So it's non-European, really specifically.
Sure.
Right. And honestly, if the movie's case is that like worshiping Gamba is bad because your soul is damned, well, Gamba's actually better than real world non-Christian religions because Gamba works. Like not to be offensive, but like what I mean is that like Francis,
the voodoo actually works. Like
right.
They successfully like hurt Donna's heart, kill that dude with the spike in the head.
Right. He wins at horse races. He does stock market good. Like Francis Lamont isn't depicted as a fake. All the occult stuff is real. So like this isn't typically the reason cults are bad is this idea that like, oh, it's this charismatic leader who's like bringing you in on a bunch of lies. And really it's all just about like propping him up. Right. But as depicted in the movie, Gamba is like just a working religion that is more effective than Christianity, apparently. And Christianity's never even really mentioned in this whole movie either. Like, it's not like faith in God is what saves the day here. Like, all that really saves the day here, everything would have gone fine for the Gambaites if one of two things didn't happen. Either ultimately, like, Bianca is undone by her jealousy. Like, she's so jealous of Rick that she does this whole thing to like capture Donna to kill her in the sacrifice, when Rick's contact with Donna after joining the cult is really just about him having like enough of a shred of decency that he doesn't want her to suffer anymore. So he pulls the pin out and then he goes to like pick her up from the hospital and tells her like, by the way, I can never see you again. You should leave town. It's dangerous here. Like, Rick was in the cult. He was fully prepared to do this for the rest of his life with Bianca. So Bianca's undone by her jealousy. And then Rick, saves the day to rescue Donna purely by the fact that he's not such a terrible person that he would watch someone he used to love get murdered in front of him, right? Which, like, I'm sorry, that's actually a really low bar to clear for like a display of morality. Ultimately, I think this movie kind of fails as examining any of the actual dangers or evils of a cult. And by presenting such a sanitized form of evil, I mean, this is a cult that wasn't even willing to kill Donna. They were just like, yeah, we'll just give her a heart murmur and keep her in the hospital. Like, when they could have killed her and had her, you know what I mean? Like, this is such a sanitized form of evil that I think it really fails at being a horror movie, because it's like, oh, the horrors of lust and wealth, maybe. I'm not even sure. So, like, we never really see the cult. Like, Rick never really does anything wrong, is the problem. The only thing that goes wrong is Bianca's jealousy. I think the reason he never really does anything wrong is probably like code stuff, maybe because he has to live at the end. But then, yes, as you point out, like, he is responsible for murdering everyone in the cult except Bianca, because he sets the building on fire. Like,
he just doesn't save them. He doesn't kill them. He just doesn't save them.
Also, this cult headquarters is in the basement of a doll shop that's on the ground floor of a large building, but we see the whole building go up in flames. So, like, what about all those other people who had like rented space in that building? I don't know. It's really, this movie's bad.
Yeah, I'm not defending that this is actually a good movie in disguise. There's survivors at the end. There's no heroes here. They will never be the same after this. Mm-hmm. And the evil's still out there. Bianca's still after them. Mm-hmm. The cult, like, Gamba's power is real. That's scary if you're on the run from the cult of Gamba.
Sure.
Like, I'm not saying it's effective. And I also kind of said this a bit earlier, but it's also very old-fashioned. When I was looking at the list for ranking, all of the movies that felt like it fit best with were from the 40s. So it's very old-fashioned, which also kind of fits with it being a B movie. They're always slow to the trend. Unless it's like, an exception to that rule. Yeah, I think I stand by this being a horror movie, just real bad.
Okay. I think the thing is like, I want to make sure that the listener gets the right impression. Like, if you watch this, there are not scenes that are going to like try to scare you, really. Like, it's just some stuff that happens, is how this movie presents the events inside of it. And I think, honestly, as much as I kind of, all I want from movies is for them to have a point of view, especially if you're going to start talking about things like evil. Like, have a point of view on what evil is and depict it. And I think I actually would admire the movie more if it was explicitly Christian and gave us that context to be like, oh, well then, sleeping with someone before marriage is real bad or whatever, because that would be a point of view. And instead it's just like, this movie doesn't depict anything. I don't know.
Yeah. What I will say also that's, for me, contributing to it's a horror movie factor is Neil Hamilton.
You're right.
Is treating this as a horror movie. Like, he is like, I'm the big bad. I will kill you with my needle. Yeah. Like, he walks through the set. Like, you should not be trifling with him. And it's just also really cool to see him in a role like this, because I believe I've only ever seen him as Commissioner Gordon. And it's in his scenes that we get the attempt to cool lighting.
Right.
I don't think they successfully pull it off, but they do some of the, like, you called it Bela Lugosi lighting on the eyes. I was thinking more of like the dramatic lighting in Star Trek with like Jim Kirk, where it's just like a band of light over the eyes. Like, they were trying, but they aren't successful.
I think that Linda Christian and Neil Hamilton think they are in different movies. Like, I think Linda Christian thinks she's in like a romantic drama about like the difficulties of romance when you're a witch. And yeah, it felt very Bell Book and Candle or whatever it's called. Yes, exactly. She thinks she's in Bell Book and Candle. Neil Hamilton thinks he's in like Revolt of the Zombies or something, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so where are you looking for ranking then?
So I was like, there's 300 movies on the list. Where is the middle? So at 150 is Dr. Renault's Secret from 1942. That movie, as well as some of the movies around here, like Orlex Hond, like the original White Zombie, I think those are very much obviously better horror than this. So I started to look down. Dr. X is at number 164 and is leagues better than this. And ironically, as I started going down, my eyes fell to The Soul of a Monster.
Okay, yeah.
Do you recall this one?
Yeah, absolutely. This is
the one... It has the baller scene in the beginning.
Yeah, this is the one where the devil's the woman, and she, like, walks in, and, like, the street lights explode and shit. But it all turns out to be a dream at the end, I think.
Yeah, the rest of it sucks. Like, it has that baller opening. Mm-hmm. She tempts his soul and shows, like, the success he could have giving up his soul, but ultimately it proves too high of a cost, and then he wakes up from his coma or whatever. And that felt similarly in vibe to this one. Soul of a Monster is from 1944, which is what I mean with, like, this movie is 20 years too late, 15 years too late.
Where is that on the list?
So that's at 183. Below that is Captive Wild Woman. Above that is the sound version. No, that's not the sound version. 1959 of The Bat.
Yeah, that's the sound version.
Okay. The sound version of The Bat. And then above that is The Hand of the Devil from 1943 by Jacques Tourneur.
Right.
Which obviously similar title, very different stories. I think by just the fact that Jacques Tourneur, that makes it my ceiling. That I would not put the 61 Hand of the Devil above the 43 French La Main du Diable. So honestly, my spot is 183 to bump down Soul of a Monster and go right below the sound version of The Bat.
I think that's way too high.
Really?
I think this movie is such a failure at being a horror movie, specifically a horror movie in 1961.
Sure.
Like, I think part of looking at these movies chronologically, means that we're always judging them by the state of the genre as it existed then, right? Like,
that's fair.
We're always thinking, like, what's scarier, right? Like, on probably like a visceral reaction level, a modern audience is going to be more scared of like Robert Eggers' Nosferatu than F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu. But we don't judge 1925 and 2025. We judge 1925 with 1925, right? And I think
wouldn't it be...
Nosferatu's earlier. It's 1922 or something like that.
But also, isn't it 2024
for Nosferatu, Robert Eggers? Yes, you're completely right.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So but you get my point I'm making, right? Like, we're not necessarily, although we are judging these movies against each other in terms of how they rank, in terms of, I think, thinking about their efficacy as horror movies, we have to think about where the genre's at. And in terms of where the genre's at in 1961, this is terrible. This feels, I talked about like it feeling like it was shot for TV. It also kind of feels like TV in the way that like it's not willing to like push any buttons taboo wise. Like, this could have aired on TV, no problem, no edits, right? And so where I started to look was way, way down, because I started to look at where in the list do movies kind of stop being horror and start becoming something else with just enough horror in them to rank. And I'm looking down below 260. So 260 is She-Wolf of London, which is a very bad lady werewolf movie. Right below that, 261, is The Catman of Paris, which is a Western that has like a lycanthrope in it, basically. Sure. And, we look at movies below that. The Monster at 263 is kind of a slapstick comedy with like a scary mad scientist in it. Sex Maniac at 267 is like a weird exploitation movie that adapts Edgar Allan Poe. This is kind of more where I'm thinking is like below 260, somewhere below there. I think it is probably better than stuff like Beast of Yucca Flats at 282 or Mesa of Lost Women at 283, because this is competently made in the sense that like the soundtrack isn't driving you nuts and there aren't like horrific continuity errors and like a sense that the script was made up as it went, right? Like, some competent people base level came in and shot this. So my range is like 260 to 283.
So you brought up Sex Maniac. Mm-hmm. I would also say Crime of Dr. Crespi falls into here of they're willing to show some shit.
Right.
It might be very boring in between some of that stuff, but they're willing to show some shit. The Mad Ghoul at 269, that's with Turhan Bey. It's kind of forgettable.
Yeah, it's the one where like he makes a zombie perform on stage or something, right?
And then The Spider-Woman Strikes Back is below that. Like, I feel like I agree with you about this area. I think below Crime of Dr. Crespi and perhaps above The Mad Ghoul or even Spider-Woman Strikes Back, Scared to Death goes a bit too far into comedy, so I think it should go above that as well.
I think Scared to Death is maybe the point on the list when we start like tipping the scales into incompetent filmmaking.
Yeah.
I think that's really what's going on there. And I would agree with you there. I don't remember Spider-Woman Strikes Back very well, to be honest, but I do know that it's Gail Sondergaard. So I think the question here is, who's the better villain, Gail Sondergaard or Neil Hamilton?
Gail Sondergaard is like the main character in that movie. Like,
yeah.
There's like the main heroine who's actually the main character, but she features so heavily. Frances is barely in here. So I think Spider-Woman Strikes Back goes above.
Okay, so then this is entering the list at the new number 271. And this is The Devil's Hand from 1961, directed by William J. Hole Jr.
Thank you for being willing to consider this horror, because I think it fits all of the parameters as said.
Sure.
Thank you for being open-minded, basically.
Yeah, for sure. I think you would need to be 5 years old, I think, to find this movie scary. But, 5-year-olds watch movies.
Yeah. When we went to see Sinners,
we're
all hanging out in the theater in our seats, and before the movie starts, this group of children, there was an adult or maybe two with them, but they were I think the youngest looked like they were 8 or 9, and the oldest was maybe 13, maybe 14.
It was 6 to 8 kids between the ages of 8 and 13 who had been brought by some adults, presumably parents, to Sinners, which is
rated R in the States. In Alberta, it's rated 14A, but these kids are still under 14. So
well, yeah, which is how they got in because they had the adult. But Sinners is a movie about sex and drugs and money and gangsters and racism and murder and vampires and oppression. What? Why did you think this was a good time at the theater for your children?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Wild. Everyone in the theater was looking over and being what the fuck? Nervous laughter. That would not happen in this movie.
No.
If you would like to see this list, you can go to our website, screamscenepodcast.com. There you can find links to any other movie that we have mentioned, as well as our appeals box. If you would like to contest this ranking, and even just the concept of this movie being on the list, please drop us a line through our Ask box on Tumblr, or reach out over email at screamscenepodcast@gmail.com. Scream Scene
updates every other Wednesday on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and many other podcasting apps. If you want to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to our RSS feed. If you don't know what an RSS feed is, look them up. They're really cool and a neat way to curate the internet for yourself without relying on algorithms. Speaking of algorithms, if you want to help the show get promoted by those algorithms, you can help us out by leaving a rating or a review on your podcasting app of choice. It'd also just help us out if you told a friend about us. Spread word of mouth about the show. Let them know about this crazy thing we're doing. Maybe share a favorite episode or two. That is the best way for us to grow our audience. If you really are enjoying what you're hearing about and you want to hear more about the Portland Peculiarium and the Scared to Death horror exhibit at the Museum of Pop Culture, you can become a patron of Scream Scene by heading over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast. There, you can become a patron of the night for as little as $1 a month. Subscribing at the $5 level gets you access to bonus audio from episodes or whole bonus episodes that we've done in the past for horror adjacent movies. Subscribing at the $10 level gets you access to a lot of writing we've done. So that's movie reviews. That's stuff like the travelogue about our trip with all the cool pictures that are going to be in there. So if you don't want to miss all of that cool bonus content, you can head on to our Patreon at patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast.
So, Ben, you already said what we're watching next week. Bloodlust?
Bloodlust, yes. A movie which I am beginning to think might also not read as horror to me, especially since we didn't think the original Most Dangerous Game in 1932 was horror. But, as we pointed out, does involve hunting down and murdering a cast of teenagers, which does become an important horror movie trait, eventually. So I think it's worth taking a look and seeing what we think about it in sort of terms of the evolution of the genre.
Well, we will see you then, creatures of the night.
Bye.
Bye.